Welcome back to the deep dive. Today, we're doing something a little different. Usually, we talk about how to succeed, how to build things, how to, grow. But today, we're going to talk about how to stop lying to yourself.
Yeah, it's an uncomfortable topic, but a necessary one. We are talking about the mom paradox.
Right. And this is something I think literally every single person with an idea has faced at some point. You have this brilliant concept. Maybe it's a new app, a consulting service, a physical product. You're super excited. So naturally, you go to the person who loves you the most. You go to your mom.
And you sit her down, you explain the whole idea, and you ask, Mom, is this a good idea?
And because she loves you and because she wants you to be happy, she says, oh, honey, that's amazing. You're going to be the next Steve Jobs.
Right, and you leave that conversation feeling incredible. You feel validated. You feel ready to conquer the world. But there is a massive problem here.
The problem is that you have zero data. I mean, you have a compliment, not a customer. By asking for validation from someone who is emotionally invested in you, you've essentially forced them to lie.
Exactly, and that dynamic, that supportive lie, is what kills businesses. It creates false positives. You build the thing, you launch it, and suddenly it's just crickets. Nobody buys it.
So today, we are tearing apart the mom test by Rob Fitzpatrick. And this isn't just a basic overview. We're going to turn his insights into a rigorous system for getting the truth, even when it hurts.
Fitzpatrick is a Y Combinator alum. He's got over a dozen years of experience, he runs Founder-Centric, and he has seen thousands of startups fail. His core thesis is pretty simple. It is not your customer's responsibility to tell you the truth.
Which is a tough pill to swallow.
It is. But it's your responsibility to ask questions where the truth is the only possible answer.
That's a huge burden shift.
Yeah.
And most of us assume that if we just ask, hey, what do you think of this? People will give us an honest critique.
But they won't. Because humans are social creatures. We are trained from birth to be polite. If I tell you your baby is ugly, I'm a jerk. If I tell you your business idea is bad, I'm crushing your dreams.
So the core of this system is about removing that social pressure entirely.
Precisely. It's about asking questions that are so specific and so grounded in reality that even your mom couldn't lie to you if she wanted to.
Okay, so let's get into the nuts and bolts of this. We've actually distilled the book into a 10-rule system for this deep dive, along with the ultimate question arsenal. But before we get to the rules, we really need to wrap our heads around the mindset.
Yeah, Fitzpatrick calls this the anti-pitch mindset. And it is the hardest hurdle for founders. When you have an idea, your very first instinct is to pitch it.
You want to explain the features, the grand vision, the potential.
Right. But the second you do that, the second you mention your idea, you have completely tainted the experiment.
Because you've exposed your ego.
Exactly. This is what the book calls the pathos problem. If you come across as needy or excited or vulnerable, the other person immediately switches into protection mode. They stop thinking about whether they would actually buy the product.
And they just start thinking about how to keep you feeling good.
Yes, you are fishing for compliments, and you will catch them. And those compliments will lead you right off a cliff.
So that leads us to rule number 1 of our system. Talk about their life, not your idea. You have to keep your idea in your pocket.
Which feels incredibly awkward at first. If you're trying to validate a business, it feels counterintuitive to not talk about the business.
But you need to understand the problem before you present the solution. If you mention the solution first, you bias the data, period.
Okay, so rule number 2. Ask about specifics in the past, not generics or future opinions. This might be the most important distinction in the entire book.
Because people love to talk about the future. They say, oh, I would totally use that. Or I'm going to start exercising more next year.
Right. The future is a place where everyone is perfect. In the future, I go to the gym 5 times a week, I save half my income, and I buy your software.
But in the past, I sat on the couch and ate pizza.
Exactly. The past is a place for hard facts. The future is a place for polite fluff. If you ask, would you use a fitness app, you are asking for an opinion on a hypothetical future. Everyone says yes.
But if you ask when was the last time you went to the gym, you get a solid data point.
Which brings us to rule number 3. Talk less, listen more. You are a detective looking for evidence, not a cheerleader looking for applause. You are there to extract information.
And rule number 4 ties right into that detective mindset. You have to love bad news.
Yes. Finding out your idea is flawed is actually a massive win because it saves you from spending a year building a product nobody actually wants.
Okay, I want to make this really concrete because these rules sound great in theory, but they can be hard to visualize in practice. Let's look at some interview examples. The book uses this amazing case study about a cookbook app.
The classic cookbook app example. So imagine a son who has an idea for an iPad app that organizes recipes, and he wants to validate it with his target demographic.
Which happens to be his mom. So in the first scenario, he completely fails the mom test. Walk us through that bad interview.
He goes to his mom and says, "Mom, I have this great idea for an iPad app for your recipes. You love your iPad and you love cooking. Do you think it's a good idea?"
And mom says, "Oh, yes, honey. I love my iPad. And I am always losing my loose recipes. That sounds wonderful."
Now, to a novice, that sounds like a total win. She identified a pain point, which is losing recipes, and she confirmed she likes the platform.
But it's terrible data. Why?
Because he led the witness. He tied the idea to his ego by saying, "I have this idea." He asked for an opinion by saying, "Do you think it's good?" And she just gave him a compliment to make him feel validated.
So he leaves thinking he has a guaranteed customer. He builds the app, spends 6 months coding it, and she never even downloads it.
Exactly. So let's rewind and look at the good interview scenario.
Yeah.
How does he use the system properly?
He goes to his mom, but he doesn't mention the app at all. He just starts a normal conversation. He asks, "Hey, Mom, how is that new iPad treating you?"
And she says, "I love it. I use it every day."
Then he digs. He asks, "What do you usually do on it?"
Oh, I read the news, I check Facebook, I look at photos of the grandkids.
Notice what is missing there. She didn't say cooking. Now, a bad interviewer would jump in and prompt her. They'd say, "What about cooking?"
But a good interviewer just explores. He asks, "Do you ever use it for anything else, maybe in the kitchen?"
And she says, "No, are you crazy? I don't want to get it dirty with tomato sauce."
Bam, that is a hard fact. That is a deal breaker constraint that he would have completely missed if he had pitched the idea first. But he keeps digging. He asks, "So how do you find your recipes right now?"
She says, "I use that old red binder you gave me 10 years ago."
And he asks her to show him. She brings it out. It's messy. It's full of index cards. Some are falling out. But here is the key. She knows exactly where everything is. She has a system. It's ugly, but it works perfectly for her.
So the truth revealed by the mom test is that she doesn't actually have a burning problem.
Correct. Or if she does, an iPad is absolutely not the solution because she is terrified of getting it dirty.
By asking about her past behavior, what she actually does, he saved himself 6 months of pointless coding. It's the difference between asking, "Would you buy this?" and asking, "How do you solve this now?"
Precisely. Would you buy this as a trap? How do you solve this now is an excavation.
Which perfectly transitions us into the bad data trap. We've talked about what to do, but we need to know what to avoid. Let's list out our 10 bad questions. These are the ones that give you false positives.
We can rapid fire these. Number 1, the ultimate trap. Do you think it's a good idea?
Number 2, would you buy this?
3, how much would you pay for it?
4, is this something you'd use?
5, any question that fishes for a compliment? Like, don't you think this design is sleek?
6, do you usually solve it this way?
7, will you use this in the future?
8, can I get 30 minutes of your time to pitch you?
9, asking for opinions instead of facts. Like, what do you think of this market?
And 10, pitching disguised as asking. Like, what if we added a subscription model that saved you time?
All of those are terrible, and they all generate what Fitzpatrick calls fluff.
Rule number 5 of our system is to deflect compliments. If someone says, "I love it," that just means, "Please stop talking so I can go back to my day."
And rule number 6 is to anchor generics. When people use words like usually, always, or never, alarm bells should ring. I usually eat healthy. I always track my expenses.
Those are lies. They are descriptions of who we want to be, not who we are. If someone says, "I usually solve this problem by looking online," you need to stop them and say, "Okay, but tell me about the last time you did that."
You anchor them back to a specific reality. You have to ignore the hypotheticals. I could see myself using this as just a polite rejection.
Okay, so we've torn down the bad questions. Now I want to equip everyone listening with the question arsenal. Let's ping pong 15 great questions that you can use to get the truth. Let's start with workflow.
Number 1, how do you currently solve this problem?
Number 2, when was the last time that happened?
3, can you talk me through your workflow?
4, why do you bother doing it that way? Which digs for motivation.
5, what are the implications of that problem? This finds the actual value.
6, what have you tried before? Validating that they've actively searched for a fix.
7, who else should I talk to? Great for networking and further validation.
8, what challenges do you face in your current workflow?
9, is there a budget for this? Checking how serious they are.
10, Why haven't you looked for a solution before?
11. Can you give me a specific example that anchors the fluff?
12. What happens if you don't solve this problem?
13. What would have to be true for this to be a huge success?
14. What would this feature allow you to do?
And 15, the premortem. If this company were to fail, why would it have happened?
Let's actually pause on a couple of those because they are so powerful. Take question 14. What would this feature allow you to do? This addresses rule number 7 of our system, which is to dig beneath feature requests.
This is a massive trap for founders. Let's do our third interview example, the unsolicited feature request. A customer says to you, you should really add a calendar to this platform.
And your immediate instinct is to write down, build calendar feature.
Which treats the customer as a product designer. And they aren't. They are giving you a proposed solution to a hidden problem. You have to ask, what would that calendar allow you to do?
And they might reply, well, I need to see when my team is actually available.
Exactly. So the problem isn't the lack of a calendar. The problem is a lack of visibility into team availability. There might be 10 vastly better, cheaper ways to solve that than building a complex calendar system from scratch.
Always ask why to get to the root cause.
Now, I want to talk about question 15 too, the premortem. If this company were to fail, why would it have happened?
That feels terrifying. It feels like asking someone to insult you right to your face.
It does, but it gives them permission to be completely honest about the risks. They might say, well, frankly, I think your pricing model is going to alienate small businesses.
They would never say that unprompted.
Never. You have to create a safe space for them to critique you.
Okay, so we have the questions. We know what to ask and what to avoid. But context matters heavily here. Rule number 8 is to avoid the meeting anti-pattern.
This is huge, especially for B2B ideas. We all have this instinct to send an email saying, can I get 30 minutes on your calendar to interview you about your pain points?
Which sounds very professional.
It sounds professional, but it creates an artificial stage. When you put someone in a formal meeting, they feel pressure to sound smart. They start theorizing. They act like an industry pundit instead of a real user.
The best data actually comes from casual chats.
Right. Catching someone at a conference or chatting at a coffee shop. You just say, hey, I'm trying to figure out how people handle this specific thing. How do you guys do it?
Because their guard is down. They aren't helping you with your startup. They're just complaining about their day. And that is where the gold is.
But look, sometimes you have to have a meeting. You can't just ambush a Fortune 500 executive at Starbucks.
True. So if you must have a meeting, you have to frame it correctly. You can't just show up and say, what do you want? You need to take charge of the conversation.
Fitzpatrick suggests a specific framing structure. Vision, weakness, pedestal, ask.
Let's unpack that.
You start by saying, I'm researching X, that's the vision, but I'm completely stuck on how people handle Y, that's the weakness.
You lower your status.
Yes. Then you say, you are the expert on this. That puts them on a pedestal. Can you help me understand how you do it? That's the ask.
I see. You aren't pitching them. You are genuinely asking for their help.
And people inherently love to help. It triggers their teacher mode rather than their defensive customer mode.
That brings us to rule number 9, and honestly, the most critical part of this entire deep dive. Always get a commitment. You've had the chat, you've avoided the fluff, you think they're interested. How do you end it?
Because this is where 90% of us completely fail. We stand up, we shake hands, and we say, thanks, this was great, keep me posted.
To be posted is the kiss of death.
It is the friend zone of business. If a meeting ends with keep me posted or let's touch base later, you failed.
But it feels good in the room. It feels like the door is wide open.
It's a zombie lead. It's not dead, but it's not alive either. You have to push for a commitment. You need to exchange currency.
Define currency in this context.
Currency is what the customer gives up to prove they are actually serious. There are 3 types: time, reputation, and money.
Let's break those down. Time.
Time means asking, can we meet next Wednesday with your team to review the wireframes? If they say, I'm really busy, just email them to me. They are not committed.
But if they clear their schedule for you, that is real currency.
Exactly. Next is reputation. You ask, this sounds great. Can you introduce me to your boss or the purchasing manager?
That is high risk for them. If your product sucks, they look bad for making the intro.
Yeah.
So if they give you that introduction, that is massive validation.
And finally, obviously, money. The ultimate truth serum.
The pre-sell, the pilot program.
Yes. Asking, can you put down a $100 deposit today? Or can we sign a letter of intent right now?
And this is where the sheer terror kicks in for founders. Because if I ask for money, they might say no.
And you want them to say no.
You are really?
You absolutely do. If they aren't willing to pay or give time or risk their reputation, they are not a customer. Finding that out today costs you nothing but a little bruised ego.
Finding that out in 6 months costs you your savings.
It's Steve Blank's concept of the early evangelist. Early customers are completely irrational. They have a problem so painful that they will pay for a broken, unfinished product just to get some relief.
If someone is hesitant, if they need to be heavily convinced, they are not an early adopter. You need to stop trying to sell to them and move on.
So if you finish a meeting and you feel great, but you have no next meeting booked, no introduction, and no money, you actually have nothing.
You have a compliment. And
Yeah.
you cannot pay rent with compliments.
Which leads us to the final rule of our system. Rule number 10. Never go alone to an interview. The debrief.
Why is going alone so dangerous?
Because you will inevitably hear what you want to hear. You'll hear the customer say, oh, that's interesting, and you will interpret it as, they love it, they're ready to buy.
But if you bring a co-founder, they will hear, that's interesting, and correctly interpret it as, they are just being polite.
You have to compare notes immediately after the meeting. Update your beliefs based on facts, not your feelings.
All right, let's summarize this entire system for everyone listening. The mom test is about getting the truth.
Rule 1, talk about their life. Rule 2, ask about the past. Rule 3, listen more. Rule 4, love bad news.
Rule 5, deflect compliments. Rule 6, anchor generics. Rule 7, dig beneath feature requests.
Rule 8, avoid formal meetings. Rule 9, always get a commitment of time, reputation, or money. And Rule 10, never interview alone.
It sounds so rigorous when we lay it out like that.
Mm.
But I think the real reason we don't do this, the reason we stick to asking, do you like my idea, is just pure fear.
It is entirely fear. It's the fear of rejection. We would much rather have a comfortable lie than a painful truth.
But here's the final provocative thought I really want you to mull over today. If you are afraid to ask the hard questions, if you are terrified to ask, will you pay for this right now because you're scared, the answer is no.
Aren't you just admitting that you would rather fail later?
That is the crux of it. You are choosing to spend 2 years of your life, your savings, your mental energy building something, only to find out then that nobody wants it.
You are trading a moment of awkwardness today for a total tragedy tomorrow.
Is your ego worth more than your success? That is the question you have to answer.
The mom test isn't just some clever sales technique. It is a fundamental time management tool. It saves your life from being wasted on things that simply don't matter.
Powerful stuff. Thank you for helping unpack all of this. Listeners, your homework is simple. Go talk to one person this week, ask about their life, do not mention your idea, and just see what you learn.
And remember, whatever you do, don't believe your mom.
See you in the next deep dive.